Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin, if I could have your attention. I have an important announcement at the start. In case there are any protesters among us this evening intending to disrupt our gathering, please do not engage. Our security will escort the protesters out of the event. Let us keep this important event focused on our message and not participate in any digressions. Jessica Bass will lead us in the Star-Spangled Banner. She's a University of Miami Frost School of Music graduate, and will be followed by Jeremy Birkin, who will lead us in Hatikva. Jeremy is the son of Rabbis Lauren and Jonathan Birkin, and the grandson of Rabbi Alvin Birkin, Rabbi Emeritus of the Tree of Life Congregation in Pittsburgh, the site of the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. Dr. Alan Mason, conductor of Hazamir Miami, will accompany both performances. So please stand and join us for the Star-Spangled Banner and Hatikva.
Oh, wait. Oh, wow. What's this? Oh, that's good.
עם חופשי וארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי וארצנו Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim.
Good evening, folks. It's so nice to see so many friendly faces out there. I'm Ike Fisher, the chair of the board of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. Take a look behind me. That towering, outstretched arm represents the silent voices of 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Shoah. The Jewish community chose to hold this important event in this sacred place to make a strong and resolute statement. We are standing together, shoulder to shoulder, to denounce the alarming worldwide rise of anti-Semitism. We have seen this hatred before. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest prejudice, and it will not be tolerated in our community or anywhere else. These are painful and trying times. During the 2 weeks of military conflict between Israel and the terrorist group Hamas, anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. reported to the ADL increased by 75% compared to the 2 weeks before the violence. These were not protests against Israeli policies. These were acts of violence against Jews. The narrative being shared through social and mainstream media of Israel as the oppressor is another propaganda war against the Jewish people worldwide. It's used by those who welcome any reason to spread their hatred of Jews. Not all criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. However, demonizing Israel, denying Israel's right to exist, attacking Israelis as white colonial settlers, or attacking Jews broadly on the basis of Israeli policy is most certainly anti-Semitism, and that's what we're here to fight against. What does anti-Semitism sound like today in 2021? Die Jew, death to Jews, dirty Jew. These are some of the shocking chants we've all read about in newspapers, seen on social media, and heard on the evening news. And shamefully, on Twitter alone, more than 17,000 variations of Hitler was right tweets were posted in a single week in May. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are all gathered to sound the voice of our community, saying with strength in our voices and strength in our resolve, never again. Please repeat after me. No hate, no fear. No hate, no fear. No hate, no fear. No hate, no fear. We are so appreciative of the many dignitaries and elected officials who have joined us here tonight to make this a community. State Senators Ileana Garcia, Jason Pizzo, and Annette Taddeo. State Representatives Michael Greco and Dottie Joseph. Miami-Dade Commissioner Eileen Higgins. City of Miami Mayor Enid Weissman. City of Miami Commissioner Joe Carollo. Miami Beach Commissioners Ricky Ariola, Steve Miner, David Richardson, Mickey Steinberg, and Michael Gangona. North Miami Mayor Philippe Benaim. North Miami Beach Mayor Anthony DeFilippo. North Miami Beach Commissioner Barbara Kramer and Fortuna Smuckler. Surfside Vice Mayor Tina Hall. Sunny Isles Vice Mayor Larissa Shaheen. And Sunny Isles Commissioner Alexander Yama. Also, we have Consul General of Canada, Susan Harper. Consul General of El Salvador, Ricardo Ernesto Cucalo Levy, the Consul General of France, Laurent Galisau, the Consul General of Germany, Andres Thomas Siegel, and the Consul General of Guatemala, Rosa Maria Merida de Moro, the Deputy Consul General of the Netherlands, Luc Nyman, and the Associate Consul of Argentina, Matthias Valverde. We have representatives from the offices of U.S. Senators Marco Rubio and Rick Scott, U.S. Representatives Maria Elvira Salazar, Carlos Jimenez, as well as Miami-Dade Public Defender Carlos Martinez and Miami Beach Commissioner Mark Samulian. This is what makes a community for Miami-Dade, for the United States, and truly worldwide. We know there are many more dignitaries in this crowd. These are the ones we knew in advance. We thank all of you, each and every one of you who stand with us here today. Let's also welcome our rabbis, cantors, and members of the clergy of all faith who have joined with us to stand shoulder to shoulder. We say thank you. I also want to extend a warm welcome to great community leaders and truly great friends, David Lawrence and H.T. Smith. I'd like to thank the more than 60 sponsoring organizations that have partnered with us for this important interfaith rally. This represents a united Jewish community, one that has come together in solidarity like the Miami Jewish community always does, to stand together as one. They are listed on our jewishmiami.org. Thank you again for being here. Please welcome now my good friend, Sidney Pertinoy, the chair of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach.
Thank you, Ike. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the leadership of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach, I welcome you and I thank you for being here to show your support. We are truly blessed to have among us tonight Holocaust survivors to whom we have made the solemn pledge that their history will never be forgotten. I stand here in their name and give voice to their anguish as they are forced to see the re-emergence of this vile hatred once again in their lifetimes. That is almost intolerable to contemplate. Tonight we are live streaming our rally online. It is another way that we are fulfilling our commitment to help people of all faiths understand what happens when unbridled hate goes unchecked. Programs at this memorial educate more than 100,000 visitors, including 11,000 local students who come annually to learn how to combat hate. Anti-Semitism is not just a Jewish issue. Anti-Semitism is a societal threat that does serious harm to the pluralistic, democratic, multicultural society that we all value as citizens of this great country and of the world. The Jewish people cannot fight this hate alone. We must all rise and raise our voices and condemn this hate, just as the world rises in protest against the hate we have all witnessed towards other diverse communities. In the words of the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, our spirit is indomitable. Where others spread darkness, let us spread light. Let anti-Semitism end with us. And now, it is my honor to introduce our good friend and true partner, Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gelber. Mayor Gelber and his family have been lifelong champions of the important work at the Holocaust Memorial, and we are grateful for his tremendous cooperation. Before I ask Mayor Gelber to address the crowd, I want to take a moment to thank the wonderful staff of the City of Miami Beach, Michelle Berger, Chief of Staff in particular, and a special thank you to my Miami Beach Police Chief, Rick Clements, and the City of Miami Beach Police Department. Mayor?
Good evening. I'm Dan Gelber, and I am a proud Zionist. And I want to just emphasize some thanks to our city staff. I see our city manager out there, Alina Hudak, and I see cops everywhere. Our chief is great, but our police officers work every day to keep us safe. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. They're everywhere. So, this isn't my speech. It's not. Because it's important to speak. It's important to stand up. You have to stand up and speak against hate, or it flourishes. It only grows in the dark. This actually is a confirmation of a wire, because while speaking is great and while standing up is great, yesterday our city just cut a check for $1 million to Israeli bonds. So, to let everybody know, you're not putting us down, we're standing up. We're always going to stand up because that's what we do in the face of hate. And we bought this Israeli bond in the memory of one of our great residents, Rabbi Solomon Schiff. And I want to tell you my favorite Rabbi Schiff moment. That's all my speech is going to be, my favorite Rabbi Schiff moment. And if you've heard me tell this before, I apologize. It's not something I write out, it's just something I feel, so you're going to have to get over it. But about 30 years ago, and this is not just a memorial, this is a reminder that hate is ongoing, and we must always fight against it. And about 30 years ago, we had what might have been one of the worst moments in the history of our city, but I think it turned out to be one of the most inspirational. About 30 years ago, and I think Mayor Kava might say the better Mayor Gelber was the mayor. I get that a lot. But a group of Nazis, self-described Nazis, had decided they wanted to defile the memorial by having a protest here. And of course, we tried to stop them, but a judge said we had to let them, but he would allow them to have their protest in the parking lot next door. So these 6 hate-mongering idiots put up a little podium, took out a little microphone, and started spewing out the tropes and just the horrible hate speech that is so offensive and so disgusting, but we know exists with some people. But across the street out here on Dade Boulevard, a counter-protest was set up. And so to the 6 hate mongers in the middle of what was then a parking lot, across the street, first dozens of people showed up, then hundreds, ultimately thousands of people showed up. And it was a crowd just like this, because it was a crowd of Holocaust survivors, lots of Jews, but also lots of Cubans, lots of Hispanics, people of all colors and hues, people of all races, right down Dade Boulevard, thousands of them. And I was there, and I was trying to listen to what they were saying, but I couldn't because of all the yelling that was coming from Dade Boulevard. And then Rabbi Schiff stepped in. It was a little disorganized, our side. It was a little disorganized. And then Rabbi Schiff stepped in and started to sing Hatikvah. And then all of a sudden, all the Jews pitched in and started singing Hatikvah, holding hands across Dade Boulevard. Thousands of people standing up and letting those idiots over there know what we thought of their thoughts and their words. And eventually, even the non-Jews somehow were either learning the words or at least the melody, but we were in unison like 2,000 people have never been in unison, and at that point, we didn't even know they existed. And Hatikvah, for all of you who don't know, means hope. The hope drowned out the hate. And that is the story of our community. We will always stand up and fight against hate. And we will always stand up and support Israel, not just today, but every day. Thank you very much for coming out today.
Thank you, Mayor Gelber. We are certainly lucky to have you in our community. It is now my pleasure to introduce Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levin-Cava, a wonderful community leader who is deeply committed to diversity and embracing tolerance among all members of our community.
Good evening, Miami. I look out, I see so many friends. I see so many people who stand up for justice in every corner. And we know that standing together, we can overcome hate with hope. Yes, I believe you, Mayor Gelber, the best Mayor Gelber of Miami Beach that I know. Definitely, definitely. And you know, this year, especially, we've seen hate manifested against so many groups, against Asian Americans, against LGBTQ Americans, against Black Americans, and against Jewish Americans. And I stand with each of these groups. I stand, and I stand proudly as your first Jewish woman mayor of Miami-Dade County. In solidarity with all of the wonderful Jewish people and Jewish allies right here in Miami-Dade County. It takes all of us. It takes our allies. And many people are not here because they're afraid to be here today. So for those of you who had the courage to come here, thank you. And for those who might be listening and were afraid, we understand and we stand with you. These are scary times. These are scary times. But this nation is better than that. This is a nation that was founded upon the rights of all of us to stand proud and stand free, and not to allow persecution of any people, of any creed, of any religion. And that is who we are, especially in this most inclusive, most diverse, most welcoming of Miami-Dade County. We will not allow attacks. We will not allow people to be denigrated. We will not allow people to be persecuted or to be treated as worthy of disrespect. We're all worthy of respect. We're all worthy of standing with freedom and dignity. That's what our country was founded on. That's what our history is. And in solidarity across the world with all people that stand for freedom and justice, we here in Miami-Dade County are in solidarity. And we want to be sure that the world knows that we will not tolerate hate. We will not tolerate hate against any group, and we will not tolerate hate against Jewish people here in Miami-Dade County, in Florida, in this country, and in this world. We will not tolerate this hate. We know this pandemic has created many, many hardships, and it has created rifts, and it has led people to point fingers and look for blame. But that is not who we are. We know that together we will fight these evils. We will fight this pandemic as we've done. We will fight this hatred as we've done, and we will fight with kindness and grace and compassion. And we will overcome those few who are bringing hatred and destroying this great country, this great community, this great world that we all deserve. So I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that as we are recovering from this pandemic, we too will recover from the base parts of our nature, and that hate will give way to hope, as the good mayor said, and that regardless of our religion, our origins, our status, we all share a common humanity, and that together we will prevail, and we will continue to build a Miami-Dade County that is the center of the inclusive world, and we will not tolerate it. So we stand up against hate, no fear. We stand together. Thank you so very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Please join me in welcoming Village of Bal Harbor Mayor Gabriel Groisman. One of the anti-Semitic incidents in our area occurred in Mayor Groisman's community to a Jewish family walking along Collins Avenue. Mayor Groisman, your strong voice and leadership against anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry is deeply appreciated. Mayor.
Anti-Semitism. You know, as a young Jewish boy growing up in this community, we learned a lot about anti-Semitism. It's part of our Jewish education. We learn Torah, we learn traditions, we learn about the state of Israel, the land of Israel, and we learn about anti-Semitism. My whole life I've tried to wonder and figure out why. Why we learned about the Babylonians that expelled the Jews from Judea, from Israel after the destruction of the first temple, or the Romans after the destruction of the second temple, or why we learn about the Spanish Inquisition of 1492, or the pogroms in Russia and Ukraine in the late 1800s that drove Jews again all over the world, even to Argentina, where my family went. We learned about the 850,000 Jews driven out of Arab lands in the 1940s. Of course, we learn about the Holocaust, and not just the systematic extermination of 6 million of our own people, but also how quickly we went from the upper echelons of European society to the gas chambers. So the question I always had as a boy is, why do we have to learn about anti-Semitism? Why do we have to learn about these horrors? Those days are over. Or so I thought. For the past several decades, the Jewish community in America and for the large part around the world have been on a honeymoon. Over the past 72 years, we've watched the state of Israel flourish. We've strengthened our bonds with this amazing and welcoming democracy, the United States of America. But unfortunately, we've allowed this honeymoon period to weaken us and to soften us as a people. Within this comfort, we've spent our time losing our connection to our roots, to our history, to our traditions, to our peoplehood, and to our land. And today, with the internet, with the cell phones in each and every one of your pockets, we see, hear, and feel the extent of the anti-Semitism, not just here, but all over the world. It's coming from all directions. Ladies and gentlemen, the honeymoon is over. We have passed the tipping point. Something must change. Now, I want to say that from the bottom of my heart, I'm very grateful for those who stand by our side from other communities. But many have heard me say before, first we have to look within our own community. And there must be a significant paradigm shift in our community. This wave of anti-Semitism didn't start this week. It's been happening for years, but it's getting worse and worse year after year and day after day. So what are we going to do about it? First, we must recognize that we're no longer in a period of comfort or complacency. We're in a time where we as a community cannot afford a divide, any divide. We must unite, not just in word, but in deed. Political differences must fall by the wayside. We are one community. We must unite against our enemies. We have no other choice. We must fight for the truth. We must not allow our enemies to divide or define us. We must fight for our place in this amazing country, the United States of America. But we must always also remember to fight for our Jewish homeland, the state of Israel, and her place in the world. But we also must fight to educate ourselves and our children. That's something that we've lost over the last several decades. We must reconnect to our roots. We must walk proud and unafraid of showing who we are and being who we are as Jews. To paraphrase Menachem Begin, we are not Jews with trembling knees. We are proud Jews with 3,700 years of civilized history. So let's ask again, why is it important to learn about our Jewish history, our roots, our land, our laws, our religion, anti-Semitism? Why is it important to teach those things to our children? Because times change. We become complacent, comfortable, and that makes us vulnerable. But remember that the reason we survive and thrive is that despite generation after generation of anti-Semitism, expulsions, pogroms, the Holocaust, blood libels, and more, it's precisely because at the end of the day, we unite. We go back to our roots, to our religion, to our brotherhood, to our achdud, to our traditions, to our religion, and we stand by our land, that will always persevere. And in the wise words of Natan Sharansky, there is no power in the world that can stand against us when we feel a part of our history, part of our people, and part of this historic struggle. And the last thing I want to say that's not in my speech is every day I drive by this memorial. My kids go to school across the street. And you see the hand coming out of the ashes of the Holocaust. But there's something else that I ask you to see if you can vision it like I do when I drive by. Every day when I drive by, I see that hand like this. It's coming out of the ashes. But remember that it turns into a fist of strength, of Jewish strength and Jewish pride and Jewish unity. And together we'll persevere. Thank you. Am Yisrael Chai.
Mayor Groisman, Gabe, thank you so much. I really feel privileged to be part of such a strong community and a strong Jewish community. It's now my delight to introduce and for us together to welcome our brand new Acting Consul General of Israel, Maor Elbaz Sarinsky, and his wife Sigal, who's also here today. They arrived just a few days ago, and this is his first public event in his new position. We warmly welcome him to our community and say Baruch haba.
Oh. I'm so excited. It shows. So I'll just read out. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, for the past 6 months since I was nominated Consul General of Israel in Miami, I have been thinking about my inauguration speech, about my vision of Florida-Israel relations, about my first visit or meeting. I never would have thought my first words in public appearance, just 4 days after my arrival to Miami, would be at a rally against anti-Semitism at the Holocaust Memorial here in Miami Beach. It is certainly necessary in light of the steep rise in anti-Semitic incidents we witnessed recently. I am excited, nervous, and at the same time proud to be here with you at this sacred site. Despite the fact that my tenure has just begun, I know that nothing I do or achieve will equal to what I am part of today. A seed, when planted and watered sufficiently, grows. So do words. Both either bloom into colorful, beautiful flowers or into dangerous, hurtful thorns. Words that one says, messages that one tweets, posts that one posts, can spiral out of control and become tangible weapons in the hands of the brainwashed and the haters. These weapons, physical or virtual, serve to distribute and execute anti-Semitism, discrimination, racism, and violence. The challenge requires, or rather demands, all of us, including politicians and media, to be more responsible, more involved, to lead, because inaction is sometimes worse than any action. We should all join hands, as this battle can only be won if we fight it together against all forms of hate aimed at all people. Among all of these forms of hate, one stands out, being the oldest yet contemporary, one which constantly changes its face and still remains the same, and that is anti-Semitism. When people say that criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic, they are correct. Criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic. We do not fear criticism, and in my opinion, we can even handle it pretty well. However, demonizing Israel is anti-Semitic. Vandalizing synagogue is anti-Semitic. Disregarding the Holocaust is anti-Semitic. Bullying Jews only because they are Jews is anti-Semitic. Using stereotypes and targeting Jewish symbols such as the kippah is anti-Semitic. demanding human rights and justice for all, but for the Jews, is anti-Semitic. And yes, supporting Hamas, who calls for the annihilation of the state of Israel, yes, surprise, surprise, including all Jews, is anti-Semitic. The saddest thing is, thank you, is in fact that we are not surprised anymore by these anti-Semitic sentiments. Not only that, the word incidents makes it hard to grasp the scale and magnitude of this phenomena, of the deeper problem that lies beneath. It makes it almost random, accidental, unintentional, maybe, as some would claim, not even driven by anti-Semitic sentiment. But no, what we see is organized anti-Semitic attacks backed by powerful and influential figures carried out after careful planning and executing. Fighting anti-Semitism is not a Jewish effort, nor should it be an American effort. It is a global task that should be implemented by all government and individual alike. Inaction is not acceptable. I commend President Biden's strong words against anti-Semitism. I, of course, also acknowledge the action taken by Florida senators, congresspeople, Governor DeSantis, state legislators, mayor, commissioners, organizations, diplomats, community and local leaders. This effort should continue, and it will continue. Just last month, we celebrated Jewish American Heritage Month. Jews have been a prominent part in forming the societies and cultures of the United States and the world. We will continue to do so. We will prevail, wearing a kippahs and our Star of David. No hate, no fear, Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you, Consul General Elbaz Durinsky, and welcome to Miami. Good evening, my name is Tracy Spiegelman, and I am honored to be the chair of the Jewish Community Relations Council of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. When the world goes horribly sideways, when violent incidents of anti-Semitism are rapidly increasing in cities throughout the United States and across the globe, when here in South Florida, Jewish people are attacked at random in the street in retaliation for Israel protecting its citizens against Hamas terrorists, and when white supremacists fly to Florida to rent a van and cruise around our state with the sole purpose of harassing Jewish people, we need friends to stand with us against hate. That is why I'm so grateful to look out and see this crowd and to see so many diverse community leaders and elected officials among us this evening, because you are our friends, and honestly, we need you now as much as we have in a long, long time. Thank you for standing with us. I am now pleased to introduce a dear friend and steadfast leader in our community, the Most Reverend Thomas Wensky, Archbishop of Miami.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Today, during a time of a global pandemic that has unmasked some of the inequities of our world, at a time of societal unrest and economic uncertainty for too many, we need to remind ourselves that we are neighbors. But more importantly, we are, in fact, all brothers and sisters, created in the image and likeness of our God. If we remember this, then we can resist the reductive language that would reduce a fellow human being to being just a problem. When we reduce a human being to be a problem, we, in effect, dehumanize him or her. And then when we do this, we then too easily give in to the temptation to look for solutions to these problems, even final solutions, as the tragic history of the Shoah reminds us. People might have problems, And certainly there are complex and maddening problems in the Middle East and elsewhere. But people are not problems. Hatred must be directed to the disease, not towards the sick. Our anger must be directed towards poverty and not to the poor. The diversity of the human family, its languages, nationalities, and races, are gifts that enrich us all. We must move beyond the mentality of us versus them, and overcoming all divisions and exclusions, see ourselves as part of an ever wider we. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Archbishop Wensky. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome another long-standing partner and close friend to our community, Reverend Priscilla Feliski Whitehead of the United Church of Christ Minister, a pastor emerita of the Church of the Sea.
Thank you for the honor of being invited to speak today, although I am dismayed at the need for such an event yet again, especially in this place commemorating the ultimate act of anti-Semitism. Expressions of hatred toward Jews have escalated recently for various reasons, often emanating from people who identify with my Christian faith, sad to say, as was the case in Nazi Germany. And so speak I must, because even decades before Elie Wiesel's comment about love and hate, a minister in Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw's play, The Devil's Disciple, says, "The worst sin towards our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That's the essence of humanity." Anti-Semitic acts rooted in hatred are denials of another's humanity. And in the face of the dehumanization of even one other person, it is not enough simply to remember, or to offer words of sympathy, or to deplore despicable words and behavior. Rather, we must act, doing everything possible to remind the perpetrators of the utter immorality, the sin of anti-Semitism, and other anti-behavior that denies another person also being a beloved child of God. We stand here before a memorial to those denials so that we do not have to build any more such memorials. I say that because the very basic moral standard, and I'm preaching to myself, we Christians embrace was summarized by Jesus himself, an observant Jew, when he quoted from texts in the Torah of his faith tradition, telling us we are called to love God with heart and soul and mind and strength, and our neighbor as ourself. In one instance, responding to a lawyer's query about who is one's neighbor, Jesus told the parable about the man we call the Good Samaritan. You know the story. First one, and then a second, outwardly good, pious person avoids passing closely by a half-dead victim of violence encountered on the way, thereby choosing to deny that man's humanity. And it took a Samaritan, himself despised ethnically and religiously and politically, to disregard anything other than the man's obvious need as a suffering fellow human being. He responded as he would want to be treated were he the victim, with care, generosity, and the promise of future assistance if necessary. Now, we have no idea if he were suddenly filled with love, the ideal, but he was not indifferent. He alone was moved with pity to respond, and that was affirmed by Jesus. Hatred in its complement of indifference in our hearts or our deeds done or undone is a moral issue. It is our humanity to share with every person given life by God, the God we claim to serve, not subject to exceptions based on religion or even politics or race or gender or whatever else one might choose to use as an excuse for dehumanizing another. And so I stand here as a Christian seeking to be faithful to follow God's call to love others, the same call we have all experienced, by what I do, which was exemplified in the life of Jesus, is one small act I can do today to be in solidarity with the Jews with whom I share life in this world and who have been victimized by the dehumanization of hateful acts, as well as the indifference of too many who choose silence in response. I choose instead to say again, no. No to anti-Semitism, not now, and not ever, not even toward one fellow human being, simply because they exist. May we pray for those whose God is thought to be too small to embrace all of the beautiful diversity of God's own creation. May we keep our hearts and minds open to seeking ways to honor it and all of its creatures as also beloved children of the God who created us, even if we don't like them always. And may we pray for ourselves that we not become seduced into responding to dehumanizing words and deeds with the same dehumanization. Change for the common good begins when enough people are not indifferent to the reality of life experienced by their neighbors. And so may God help us to maintain the vision of those divine ideals, blessing us with the strength and courage to live up to them. Never again.
Thank you, Reverend Whitehead. It is now my honor to introduce Reverend Robert Brooks, Jr. He's a senior pastor and teacher for St. Peter's Missionary Baptist Church in Perrine, where he has served as spiritual leader for over 10 years. He has also spent time working with the Jewish community in South Dade. Welcome, Reverend Brooks.
Good evening. I didn't come to say a whole lot, but I wanted to first of all express with great sincerity how much I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to demonstrate our concern and our shared love for God and our shared love for humanity. I've heard it often tonight, and I like to repeat it. We've seen this before, but never again. I've pondered the history of anti-Semitism, and I heard some great words from the mayor of Belle Harbor. I look back and I reflected on the much publicized lynching of Leo Frank. He was a Jewish brother from Georgia. In 1915, he was lynched by a mob of Southerners. And this lynching, as unjust as it was, this lynching caused many Jews to become acutely conscious of the similarities and differences between themselves and African Americans. Now that's good news, because it was this consciousness that led to an increased sense of solidarity between our communities. It was this same consciousness that made it possible for civil rights leaders from the Black community and the Jewish community to interlock arms, stand against systems of hatred, stand against systems of racism and anti-Semitism. So here we are, over 100 years later from when this brother was unjustly lynched. Here we are standing together, and we stand in solidarity. You see, back then, that lynch mob, thank you. In 1915, that angry lynch mob was inspired. They were inspired by hatred. They were inspired by their hatred towards my people, towards your people. They were inspired. But we're inspired also. And we're inspired by something different. We're inspired by a fire that cannot be put out. We're inspired by principles of justice, principles of faith, and principles of hope. And I learned something about hope. I hope I say it right, but hativka, if I said it correctly. We stand on that, and I want you to know that we have more in common than we have different. We're with you. No hate, no fear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Brooks. I'm supposed to let you all know that the drones overhead are safe. They're part of security. So not to worry. I spotted one of them myself. Ladies and gentlemen, I am now pleased to introduce a new friend, but not a new friend to our community, Gloria Garces, who is known for her pro-Israel efforts throughout Latin America within the evangelical, Christian, and Jewish communities. She is leading the We're Solved movement to educate and mobilize thousands of Christians to stand against anti-Semitism. She's here with her dad, who I know must be very proud. Gloria, please welcome Gloria Garces.
So yes, good evening. How are you? ¿Dónde están los latinos? Eso, así me gusta. So as you've heard, I am a Christian. I am a proud Latina, muy orgullosa. But I'm also unapologetically a Zionist. Yes. I am only one of millions of Christians around the world, thousands of which I know, who stand with you. And I'm here to tell you, you do have allies. You do have friends. You have friends in us. And I know it's easy, right? You've heard it so many times, oh, I'm your friend, I am your ally. But those of you, and I know that there's many of you in the crowd that know me, you know I walk the walk and I talk the talk. And in fact, I want to stop my speech for a second and honor the fact that we have the Consul General of Guatemala here, because it was particularly our efforts as a family to get the President of Guatemala to decide to move the embassy to Jerusalem that caused us to get tons and tons of hate, to feel it in our own skin. In fact, my father is here to testify that his businesses were targeted because of the work that we did. Articles, newspapers were writing terrible things about my family, about myself. I've been personally ridiculed, singled out. But guess what? I'm not fearful. I don't have any fear, and I'm here to tell you, I'm here to stay and stand with you. And today we've heard amazing speeches, and thank you for all of those who have spoken, because we've talked about standing against hate. We've talked about, eradicating anti-Semitism. But I want to go a little bit deeper into that word that it's in all those posters, fear. A little bit deeper. Why? Because in my mind, it starts like that. The circle starts with fear that leads to hate, that then leads to violence, and violence provokes fear again, and the circle goes over and over and over again. And if we want to eradicate hate, and if we want to eradicate anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, we need to deal with fear. And in our Christian Bible, it says that perfect love casts out fear. El perfecto amor echa fuera al temor. That God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, of love, and a sound mind. A sound mind to do the right thing, and do the right thing by everyone, no matter their religion, no matter their race, no matter who they are. And that's why we're here for you. So in going against fate and in dealing with that seed of fear, we need to think about love. And I'm not talking about the wishy-washy kind of love, the rose-colored glasses kind of love. No, I'm talking about courageous love. I'm talking about defiant love. I'm talking about a type of love that goes against all odds. And it makes me think about that Armenian Christian man who stood in LA a couple of weeks ago in front of his Jewish friends, and he faced a mob that literally left him severely bruised and damaged and in the hospital because he showed true love. And I want us to think about that love when we think of people that are fearful to post something on social media, or to come to a rally, or to even wear your Magen David around your neck. Let's think about courageous love, because that is how we're going to eradicate fear, that is the seed of hate. Thank you. And I want us to pause for a second and for each of you to think, okay, yeah, we might be fearful. You know, there are terrible things that are happening. But have we allowed fear to creep in so deep into our life that we're fearful of our friends, that we question their intentions? And I want today to ask two things of you as an evangelical Christian, and many of you know how much I love this community. Two things I want to ask of you. One is that today you make a decision to strengthen your ties with your Christian friends. And not only your Christian friends, but friends from any other group that is willing to lend out a hand. Strengthen the ties, strengthen your friendship. Do not be afraid, do not question the intentions. And two, I want us to use that love, that courageous love, for you to guide us. Not many of my Jewish friends are as involved as I am. Many don't know how to stand and how to do things, tangible things, for you. And I ask you today, teach us, guide us, tell us exactly what you want us to do. Let's work together so that we can completely work against these false narratives on social media, so that we can demand our, community leaders, religious leaders, celebrities, authority figures to have a proper stance about Israel, about the Jewish community. That we may send letters and we may send emails, form marches, whatever needs to be done in order to effect change. Guide us today. And one thing that saddens me terribly is when I hear my Jewish friends, and I have many, that sometimes say, oh, no, let's not rock the boat. Let's not make waves. Let's stay quiet. Let's stay in the back. We don't want anybody to see us. Well, that's not you guys. You're here. You're loud. You're asking those that you've stood for to stand for you today. But today is the day where we need to ask for the entire community to stand away from from fear, and stand in love. Let's leave fear behind and stand in love, because it is time that we do what we need to do. And it is to strengthen each other, to help each other out, and to be there for each other. I commit to you, like I've done in the past. I am here, and my loved ones are here. We're standing for you. We're standing for your truth. We're standing for your culture, for your religion, for the prevalence of the Jewish state, and for your peace. And that is our commitment. Let us now rise up, and as we defend, and how we've seen all of you guys defend every single minority group, every single persecuted group, I want you guys to also stand for yourselves, hold the hands of your allies, and say, let's go. No hate, no fear. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Amazing. Friends, please welcome Matt Anderson, Executive Director of MCCJ. This respected organization has a rich 75-year history in our community, working to convene Muslim, Christian, and Jewish leadership to form meaningful relationships and stay in conversation with one another during both the good times and the trying times. Matt.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting MCCJ to be part of this evening. And it's a real honor to be standing shoulder to shoulder with my Jewish brothers and sisters tonight. Our team at MCCJ is hyper-focused on embracing diversity and building an inclusive Miami. And that inclusiveness does not include hate. We at MCCJ deplore the recent increase in anti-Semitism acts throughout the world, as well as in our community here in South Florida. There's no excuse for hate crimes. They undermine efforts to create secure communities where all can live without fear in a peace that affirms the dignity that is every human's birthright. We invite all people of goodwill to stand with us in Miami as we strive to hold the high ideals of a unity that rejects violence, vandalism, verbal attacks of intolerance. We will continue to work with our partners in the Jewish community, as well as those of other faiths, races, political persuasions, and differences, to promote and protect respectful dialogue toward greater understanding and inclusivity of everyone with whom we share life in our fragile world and this community. I need you all to repeat after me. We are stronger than hate. And I'm going to leave you with some words from our past executive director, of blessed memory, Roberta Shevin. How can you hate somebody whose story you know? Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Matt. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a dear friend, Steve Stowe, Vice President, Executive Director of Miami Heat Charitable Fund and Miami Heat Basketball Operations. We appreciate the strong statements made by the Miami Heat organization recently. The influence of the Heat organization in our community is tremendous, and we are grateful for their partnership in this fight against hatred. Please welcome Steve Stowe.
Thank you for having me speak here tonight. Before I start, I want to give a special thanks to Chief Clements and all the law enforcement and all of Miami Beach Police Department for their service and keeping us safe every day. I stand here tonight before you and I ask all of you to reach down deep inside. Think about who you are. Forget about what you do for a living. Some of you are teachers, some of you are attorneys, and some of you have the most important job of all, and that's being a parent. We've heard people speak from their hearts, and they've talked about all the concerns they have for our society right now. On my way over here, you know, Tracy said I work with the team. Tonight was supposed to be Game 6. If you guys are Heat fans, it's where we had something going on at the arena tonight. But that didn't happen, then that's okay. And this is very important. And I had the opportunity of talking to Udonis Haslam face-to-face, eye-to-eye, in person, before I came over here. And we talked, and we had a deep talk about something that occurred last year, about a year to the date, where Udonis stood at the steps of the Miami Police Department and talked at a press conference. Now, at that press conference, Udonis was scared, he was frustrated, and he didn't know what to say. He even told me this today, you know, I wasn't born a leader. This is something that I've become. And I think all of us can share that thought. We're not all born into something. We all grow into it. And I stand here today, a year later, and we all have the same thoughts that Udonis Haslam, the three-time world champion, had a year ago today. The only thing is the backdrop today is the Holocaust Memorial. And something that resonates with our team is trust. The reason why we had those championships is because of trust of our teammates. But how do you get trust? How much does it cost? Because that's something that you cannot pay for. So we must change. We must acknowledge. We must listen. We must listen beautifully. We've been marching. We've been praying. Nothing has changed yet. So what do? We need action. Tonight brings back the memory I have from almost 40 years ago as a 9-year-old boy, standing as a product of the Hebrew Academy on Pine Tree Drive. unfortunately, is an unwilling recipient of anti-Semitic attacks as a 9-year-old boy, time and time again, on a public street. I did not let that period of my life define who I am. So we're deeply saddened by the acts of cowardly anti-Semitism committed against the Jewish people, not only here, but throughout the world. So mere words cannot express our grief. These actions should not drive a wedge between the inherent love we have for one another. It is time to lift ourselves above all of this and show the love we have for each other together. We owe it to us to mend this divide. Last week, the Miami Heat released a statement starting with the words, "Enough with hate." Those are not just words. The importance of those words will lead to action. So tonight, I represent the Miami Heat organization and all the players and staff and coaches and owners of that wonderful place. But I'm also an active member of the Jewish community and a longtime member of Temple Beth Shalom. I see you guys back there too. And not only Beth Shalom, a very important part of the Miami Beach JCC and the Miami Beach Elite team that also is very, very active. And that's the most important part to me, is our youth. And whether they're Jewish or not Jewish or whatever you are, those are the kids. As some of you are here tonight, no, it's not about what happens on the court. And I can attest to that. My career at the Heat for over 22 years is what about we do on the court, but we're doing this 365 days a year. Off season, in season, there's no off season. So I leave you with this. Listen to each other. Listen beautifully to each other. And as my father always says, you never know where the smallest act of kindness will take you. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Steve. That was a great message for us. Listen beautifully. I really like that a lot. Your support means a lot to all of us, and please convey our heartfelt thanks to the team, the entire Heat organization. Friends, I'm Jacob Solomon. I'm privileged to serve as the exec of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. Thank you all for coming. It's amazing. Thank you for coming. Thank you for staying. We're nearing the end. We're nearing the end of the program. You've been amazing, and I'm so grateful. I want to thank you all for braving the weather, the traffic, probably some concern about security. It's probably also the first time for many of us that we're back in a large-scale in-person gathering. And I don't know about you, but it feels good to be in 3 dimensions, and maybe even to hug some people. To our Christian and non-Jewish friends who are here, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your friendship, your love, your support means the world to us. It gives us strength, and it gives us comfort to know that we're not alone. Your presence shows your decency, and it means everything to us. And to the members of our wonderful, diverse Jewish community, to quote the psalm, Hinei ma tova manayim shevet achim gam yachad, how beautiful, how splendid it is to be together as brothers and sisters. We need you here. We need you here tonight, and we need you here every day, because our strength and our unity is required for the sake of our people and for the sake of all decent people who cherish the American values of inclusion, equality, and the right of all peoples to live free of fear. George Washington wrote to the Jews of Newport, Rhode Island in 1790, quoting Torah, that everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. Continuing in his letter to the Jews, for happily, he wrote, the government of the United States gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. And yet, I am here to tell you what you already know. there is a level of vulnerability, of fear, and of anger among American Jews that feels different. It feels new to me. It feels incredibly dangerous. There are attacks on Jews, verbal, physical, and in some cases even lethal, coming from across the political spectrum of our own society and from attackers whose only common denominator, the only thing they have in common with one another, is their hatred of Jews. You have neo-Nazi white supremacists on the right with their tiki torches shouting, "Jews will not replace us." You think it's just a fringe group? Ike told you earlier, ADL reports that the phrase "Hitler was right" was tweeted more than 17,000 times in 1 week this May. Sieg Heil, Heil Hitler, blood and soil. It always begins just with words. But the murdered victims of Tree of Life and Poway are testament to the fact that what begins with words does not end with words. Or the group-thinking influencers on the left who have made hatred of Israel the latest cultural touchstone. You've heard it all night long. Criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitism. Well, it's not. But supermodel Bella Hadid, with her 60 million followers on Twitter, posted a video of Louis Farrakhan. Yes, homophobic anti-Semite Louis Farrakhan, the same one who refers to Jews as satanic, bloodsuckers, and termites. Friends, that's how anti-Zionism morphs easily and seamlessly into rhetoric that invites and incites violent anti-Semitism. And now these two wonderful groups are joined by people who hold that all Jews are responsible for the policies of a democratically elected sovereign state of Israel. And they believe that it's somehow okay to attack Jews on the streets of Paris or London or New York, or yes, right here, as you heard from Mayor Groisman, right here in Bal Harbor, because of Israeli policies? Where's the outcry? Where's the outrage? Where are our friends? Where are the rest of them? I am sorry to tell you, and it pains me to report, that not everyone whom we invited to participate in this rally said yes. It was too political, or Israel is too controversial. Really? It's too controversial. There are debates about any other country's right to exist. I'm for Israel, I'm against Israel. Does any other country have to defend its right to exist among the communities of nation? Does anybody withhold support or allyship from any other victim of a hate crime because of the policies of a foreign government? Of course not. We know that Israel is not a perfect country. Just ask all the Israelis that you know. No country is perfect, but using Israeli policies to excuse or explain away these behaviors is moral perversion, my friends, moral perversion at its worst. The situation in Israel doesn't create anti-Semites, it exposes them. And we are seeing far, far too many of them, and too much of this to be ignored. Our first and best recourse is to raise our voices and to expose it for the gutter-level bigotry and hatred that it is. Our program today, though, fills me with hope because it demonstrated that fighting anti-Semitism is not just a concern of the Jewish people, it's a concern of good people of all faiths. All of us must work together to fight this scourge and to call it out whenever and wherever it occurs. As a Jewish people, we rely on our unity, we rely on our solidarity, we rely on our friends, and thank those of you who are here. And we also rely on the covenant we have with God and with each other. To lead us in prayer and in song, and to wrap up this evening's program, I'd like first to call up my friend and colleague, Rabbi Fred Klein, the director of Mishkan Miami and the executive vice president of the Rabbinical Association of Greater Miami, after which we will be led in song by Alan Hatch, accompanied by Dr. Alan Mason. Thank you all once again for being here.
Thank you. Friends, let us pray. Avinu Shebashamayim, our universal heavenly parent, Today we call upon you in this name to remind us all that each of us are your children. In your infinite wisdom, you created each of us in your image. Our tradition teaches us that humanity was created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. Yet, when you forge the image of the human being, each one is unique. Each one is different. Each one has gifts to bring to this world, and each one of you here this evening, like a pure white light refracted through a prism, creating a rainbow, each of us bring our own individual and collective color. In that dance of color, we find art. In that dance of color, we deepen perception. And in that dance of color, we find beauty. And yet, tonight we remember that ultimately, we are not individual colors, but only refractions of a greater life. Sadly, today we gather because in recent years, we have forgotten that not only are each of us your children, but also that each of us are your brothers. Each of us are brothers and sisters. Like Cain, who killed the light of his own brother Abel, bringing darkness into the world, in recent years our hearts have darkened, eclipsed by the rage, anger, even hatred and violence that we see all around us. Never again we committed ourselves, and we feel despair as we see it again in the streets of America, the destruction of synagogue property, the silence of parts of the media, and the delegitimization of the right of the Jewish people to defend themselves against those who might destroy us. Today we come all here together as fellow brothers and sisters to speak out against one of the longest hatreds, the dark shadow of anti-Semitism. Yet, the Jewish national anthem, as we've mentioned today, is Hatikva, the hope. We shall not despair. We will not remain silent. We will not succumb to fear. And today, we commit towards the collective work of redemption, Tikkun Olam. And what will we redeem? Love from the clutches of hatred, understanding from the myopia of prejudice, kindness from a world full of cruelty, and reconciliation from a world full of violence and war. We will gather together the sparks of life scattered throughout the darkness, creating a torch of light that will lead us forward. We will again see that great white light. We will again see the image of God that resides in each one of us. We ask you, O God, to strengthen us in the days and years ahead, and we commit ourselves to make our heavenly parent proud of us as a community. Ken Yehi Ratzon, this will be your will, O God. Let us all now say, Amen.
Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Israel. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Israel.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This concludes our program. Please travel home safely. Thank you again for coming, each and every one of you.
Everything was great. Thanks for all your help.